I was raised on a farm, and like you become resourceful. I installed flooring for 15 years of my life, so you learn how to become resourceful. I needed something, and I knew I could probably make it, so I made it. But then I had to tweak it. I'm Dr. Jason.
And I'm Benjamin Azarian, CEO of Therabody.
And you're watching Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with the two people who are responsible for one of the most dynamic, interesting, and sort of success story brands that I've heard of in a long time, Therabody. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah.
Dr. Jason, I'll start with you. Usually I ask my guests, how did you get this job?
I think I was born to do this for some reason. It started when I was really young. This came from an accident that I had in 2007, and the idea of being able to deal with my own pain, and it just sort of grew into this amazing thing that you see today. I mean, there's way more behind that, but.
Well, let's hear about it. So, for people who don't know about your accident, what happened?
So in 2007, I was here in Los Angeles splitting traffic like you do. I got in a motorcycle accident, a car cut me off. But from the accident, I had a lot of soft tissue damage, mostly in my neck and on my right side. That, as a chiropractor here in Los Angeles, I was looking for something to help treat me between my visits. Because I would go to my office, I'd get treated, but then there's those hours where you're just sitting there, you can't do anything. I felt, it's still part of who we are today, but I felt powerless, I felt depressed and scared, and all those things you do when you're in pain. So what motivated me to do this, and I say necessity is the mother of invention, is the pain. And I wanted to find something that I could do for myself between my visits. Otherwise, it was one step forward, one step back, and I've seen that happen. Yeah. So I created something. I'd learned what vibration was, and I had applied that to my body, but it wasn't scratching the itch. So I thought maybe if I made something that was stronger, more powerful, maybe I'd get a little bit better result. So I made something, and it worked.
Put a timestamp on this. About what year is this? When did this all happen?
Yeah, the accident was October 17th of 2007.
Okay.
This idea came to me in January of 2008.
Okay.
So from January of 2008 to July, I used this thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't something I was proud of. It was just, I was using it behind the scenes, getting better quickly. I was the first patient. Several months later, a patient came into my clinic. Similar situation. His insurance was horrible. He wasn't making a good income. His injury was really bad. It wasn't looking good for him. And I thought, let's try this and see if it works. And it did, to my surprise. I thought, wow, that worked on him like it did me. And I realized then I had to figure this out.
Yeah. For context, I'm thinking 2007. So iPhone 1 comes out right around that time. Probably came out around September 2007, if I remember correctly.
That's an interesting comparison.
And then 2008, we're sort of talking off camera how, all of us were impacted by the Great Recession. The economy at the time just completely fell apart. Ben, where were you at the time, 2008?
2008, we were just actually, I was running an aerospace company. And when the recession hit, the real estate prices dropped dramatically, and so we decided to sell our aerospace company and other companies that I was involved with and really focus on buying distressed real estate.
Yeah. I mean, what a wild time, right? It was, for us, we had just started this little production company of ours. We were just getting off the ground. We had all these best laid plans, and then everything went away instantly. And I can really relate with trying to find a solution to the problem. That's why we started this show in the first place, right? I recognized that I was bleeding out, let's face it, as a company. Like I had my little startup and I was instantly like in big trouble financially because we had no clients, it was a recession, and I had no idea. I mean, 2008, 9, 10 just got worse. And then it just continued to sort of tail off into 11, 12. I think we sort of started getting back on our feet around 13, 14, but like those are tough times. How did you come up with the engineering? Because you were a doctor, but you didn't have any maybe design background.
I've told people this many times. it was timing. It was my pain was guiding me through the use of this thing.
Yeah.
And it would have never happened that way had I not been in the situation I was in. So it was just the unfortunate of that experience is really ingrained in me, almost the protocols. So now I started using this on other people. And as I did that, I started understanding, well, there's science to this.
Yeah.
And what the science was the amplitude, which is the distance it would travel. I recognize there's something to that, because vibration doesn't have a lot of amplitude. It doesn't come off the body. So I needed this distance.
Yeah.
That happened. Then I started realizing what the frequency was, how often this was touching my body, working with the nervous system. So understanding the mechanics of what this was doing, those were just two pieces. Then you had to add in the power, the torque it takes to apply the pressure. And then as we grew into our company, ergonomics became super important. Our attachments and the material became super important. How the product was used became important. So we're still evolving. We're constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Even from our G1 back in 2000 and whenever I made
16.
it, 12, yeah.
So I want to go back in time a little bit and ask sort of about the origin of that, because I know a lot of people who watch the show, maybe they have this great idea for this product or service, right? And they're thinking about, okay, how do I bring it to market? What's the process? Even getting a patent, all that, maybe I'll ask you about. But did you like create this makeshift sort of like sample? Like, how did you?
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine maybe you like put it on a drill bit.
It was a jigsaw. Yeah, I recognized that I needed that movement.
Yeah.
And I told you earlier that I felt like I was born to do this. I was raised on a farm, and like you become resourceful. I installed flooring for 15 years of my life, so you learn how to become resourceful. I needed something, and I knew I could probably make it, so I made it.
Yeah.
But then I had to tweak it. So I made from 2008 to 2015 when I met Ben, I made 5 different versions, selling several of them throughout that time, gathering a lot of data and understanding all these things I just talked about, ergonomics. And by the time I met Ben, I felt like I had enough to be able to have someone help me from that point forward.
Yeah.
I'd literally taken it as far as I could.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if I'm, and we're just getting to know each other, but you know, you're the doctor with some, like, it really takes one to know one, right? Like, so because you were injured, you knew exactly what you may have needed, and you were exploring and experimenting with how to solve it. Mm-hmm. And then Ben comes in, and he's like the business brains, or maybe getting you organized, you know, visionary, you know, business disciplined, you know, numbers guy. I'm thinking maybe he understands the sales, the branding, the marketing.
No, that's exactly right. And I think that's why we work so well together.
Yeah.
We really complement each other.
Yeah.
And what makes this successful is I can't do what he does, and I bring something to the table that is more focused on the business side.
So what are some early mistakes that you made? So it sounds expensive to go to market, and I actually think, you know, at least in my business, and we work with a lot of clients on this side too, is I see people doing things out of order. That is, the client will come to us and say, I've got this amazing product, which they've already gone to the trouble and spent money to make. And we're like, oof, you know, great, but like, do you know that there's demand for that already? Do you know that there's other people who need that service? I just think, you know, sometimes there's an exercise that needs to be gone through, which is first, you know, find the people who need what you think they need, and then try and solve their problem before you race out to create the product. But did you make any mistakes like that? Like go out and shoot too early, or spend too much money? Or?
I'm going to jump in. I have to tell you, one of the things that I learned early on with Ben is that failure is part of this.
Yeah.
Like if you're not failing, you're not succeeding.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be hard for me to point out one particular or a few particular, because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I learned from him is if we're not failing, or if we're not being called crazy sometimes, then we're not really doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, we're not innovating. We're not trying new things.
Well, so how do you temper that sort of visionary attitude with budget? Because, I mean, that works as long as you have carte blanche, right? But then...
I think we're smart, we're scrappy. We didn't just go out and hire the biggest, most expensive engineering firm. We really try to solve individual problems, and that was a lot more practical and within our budget. And I think part of the challenge was when we launched a G1, we knew that was not the perfect product. So we actually had to think about, to your point, do we not launch it, spend a bunch of money to redesign it, and then launch the next generation, launched a company with the second generation. We decided to launch with the G1. We knew it was not the perfect product. It was weird looking. It was an industrial looking product because it was a converted jigsaw.
Yeah, you MacGyvered it, right? Basically.
Totally.
That's a great description. But we went to market and people loved it. And was it noisy and ugly? Yes. But people tried it just like I did when I first met Dr. Jason. And I realized this thing works. So
It's functional.
it's functional. And when you're in pain or when you're sore and this helps you, you don't care what it sounds like or looks like. It looks like, so you just want to use it.
Yeah, I mean, the first cell phone was like a big brick, right? Like, and that got refined over the years. How did you raise the money? I mean, it sounds expensive to innovate a new product like that or to invent something. And where did you spend the money? Like, did you have to get patents? Were you worried about imitation, like overseas? You make something and then it's semi-successful and then pretty soon someone in another country rips it off.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that side of it.
We launched a company in 2016. It was actually the G1. We launched it in July of 2016.
What was the company called?
It was called Theragun.
Theragun, okay.
And we got a lot of slack for calling it Theragun. The name of the company having a gun in it, and gun equals violence, and why would we be promoting violence? And we got a lot of criticism for it. But frankly, we didn't have a better name, and that's the name that Jason already had with the company that he was, he had with the product called Theraguns. We dropped the Z, it was Theragun.
That's another story.
So it's kind of funny now you look at it, and the whole category is called a massage gun. And I remember Jason said, it's probably not the best name, but maybe someday people will have a positive association with the word gun, and it will be therapeutic in helping people, not just hurting people. And so we stuck with it, but we always knew we wanted to change the name, and we rebranded last year to Therabody.
Yeah. I want to hear more of that story about the rebrand and the exercise you went through and how you came. I mean, to me, body is intuitive and it makes a lot of sense.
We'd gone through iterations and we'd talked about it so many different times. And we were just sitting in a room and it's typical. It was like the end of the day. It was like late. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock. We were still hammering away on these names. And he and I were sitting next to each other. I'll let you take it out from here. But he just kind of had this idea. And I was telling him, like, but it works on every body. And it's like, just started kind of happening. And then he said it. He's like, what about?
It's funny because we had been trying to rename the company for 3 years. And every time we came up with a name, everyone's like, oh, that's so boring, or it's not unique.
What else did you come up with?
Oh, wow. What was it?
Theralife.
Theralife.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Sounds like Herbalife.
yeah. It just, nobody got excited by it.
Yeah. No one wanted to declare, like, Theralife. Like, it just didn't seem right. So,
And the harder part was, as the company grew, as Theragun became more popular, there's a lot of brand equity in Theragun, so it made it more difficult to change the name.
yeah.
And as Jason was saying, we were looking to launch our 4th generation product line. We were going to launch our CBD line. We had to have it come up with a name for that as well. And so we're kind of putting all these words on a whiteboard and trying to mixing and matching.
Okay, wait, so pause.
Yeah.
So I love the image of that, but like, who else is in that room?
Oh, we've got, no, it's not just us.
No,
we
it's
have
about 5, 6 people.
We have people that have been in the company who didn't matter what their role was. They've been around. They knew what the brand was.
Yeah.
And we actually, if you think about it, we were talking about Norwegian names, Greek names.
He's Norwegian.
Like, we were trying to look for things that meant helping, healing, sharing.
Health.
Believing, health, wellness. Like, we were looking for words like that. And it just sort of happened. That's why it was so funny when it happened. We were like, oh my God, it's right there in front of us. We didn't even see it.
And so when somebody mentioned it, and I'm like, well, let's see if the domain's available. And then you got to make sure trademark's available. And sometimes, especially when you're naming a company, not a product, something is missing, whether it's the Instagram, the domain name, the trademark. Yeah. And I looked at it and Therabody was available. I'm like, how is this domain available? Like, went on Instagram, nobody had used it. So while we're still trying to finalize the name, I registered all the names on Instagram, on GoDaddy and all that.
Yeah,
and,
such a
and we
great
named
story.
it.
It literally happened like that. He just bang, 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 bang. I got that one. Bang,
I'm like,
bang,
we got the
bang.
name. They're like, what do you mean? Which name? I'm like, Therabody. That we have the domain. And then the more we said it, the more it resonated. It felt really right.
Yeah.
So this show is called Behind the Brand. We talk about brands a lot. I love how the brand got started. Necessity is the mother of invention. I totally agree. I love the discussion about, branching out from a single product line to more of a brand or branded company. Talk to me about what you think. What is a brand, and what makes a brand? What's the definition of brand? And then try to break down what the Therabody brand is.
I think there's a lot of companies that make products, but they're not a brand. So I think a brand is something you stand for and you have a bigger purpose than just a product that you're making. And I think that's what Therabody is. And that's one of the reasons we changed the name. We wanted to convey that bigger mission. Because what we realized was we're not a fitness recovery company. We're helping people live a life, just like Jason's original story, a life without pain, a life with better movements, a life where they can do things. And whether it's because you worked out or whether you're injured or you have some kind of an ailment, Theragun, that product, helped everyone. And we realized that, well, it's not just Theragun that people need. There's so many other things that people can use in order to live a healthier life using natural products. And so we renamed it to Therabody to kind of embody that brand story of saying that we're here to help people live a better, healthier, natural lifestyle.
How did you know, or how do you know what people want? It started with Dr. Jason. He got injured. That makes total sense to me. Now, how do you then begin to branch out and create other products or services? How do you know?
I really feel like it started from the very essence of what I was doing, because what I brought to Ben was this constantly curious, what's this doing? And as we started creating that, it created a white space where suddenly now we were talking about something that wasn't there before. And so as he and I started understanding, it was understanding the responsibility we had to talk about this space and what we were going to provide for that space. Yeah. So it started back then, and then as we got perfected the Theragun, which it's not ever going to be perfect, we started realizing, like Ben said, there are other opportunities, and we started asking our customers, what do you like about this? Yeah. What do you want to know about this?
How did you ask them? Did you send out surveys? Were you doing social media?
Before COVID, we were out. We'd go to training, and we were doing stuff one-on-one. So I would work with teams. I'd work from gyms to teams to hospitality. I'd be with the people. So you'd literally get feedback. And because it was such a disruptive product, people loved talking. So we got a lot of feedback. Later on, it was through social.
And you have to keep in mind, when you create a category, there is no point of reference. So you can't go to someone and say, what kind of massage gun do you want? Yeah. When do you use percussive therapy? Yeah. No one knew what it was and nobody used it.
Well, Henry Ford gets credited with this quote, right? Like, if I would have asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right.
And, so you need to innovate, you need to be thinking beyond sometimes. But I'm curious more the utilitarian answer to that question, which is maybe asking for people who
sure.
are trying to reach their consumers. And maybe, I don't know, do you have a wholesale and a retail business? Because you talk about being connected with gyms and being able to reach these people.
Yeah, you know what? I think
you do that?
Yeah, you're saying something, and this is actually to credit to Ben. He started realizing that my limited perspective was talking to chiropractors, physical therapists, and body workers. They knew my language. So I thought, that's the avenue that I'm going to cure the world. Yeah. Stepping into this with Ben, he stepped back and said, no, they're your amplifiers. Let's feed them the information, and they will now start sharing with their customers. Because we all have a chiro, we all have a physio, we all have a body guy. If you don't, you're a knucklehead. So if for us to be able to understand those guys are our voices, people, let's teach them what percussive therapy is. And we got so much feedback then. Because you're talking to people that understand the space, and they're coming back and saying, it's too loud. The battery doesn't last that long. Those attachments aren't good. Man, give us more. We ask for broken down products, send them back, because we don't know what happened to it. Yeah. We're still in that space.
Yeah, and we've used it on a mass level, social media, doing polls. Yeah. What do you like? How do you use it? But also educating people all the different things that they didn't even think about. So using a Theragun or a Thera1 for sleep. People never thought of it that way. So it's also listening to the customers. And there's not a product that we will make and we will launch unless Jason has actually tested it with his patients, with our athletes, and getting that feedback. Do they like it? Does it feel right? Does it hurt? Does it feel good?
This is such a good lesson. I think I'm going to just underscore it a little bit, which is, if you have a new product or service, if you're trying to go to market, try and get as niche as possible, right? Get as focused and narrow and deep as possible, which is what you guys did. You went to the healers, the doctors, right? That was not like, oh, this is broadly appealing to everyone. You went narrow and deep, and then you worked out from there. So you used those people as your evangelists. They also became your R&D.
And our credibility. So if we were to tell people percussive therapy is great, they'd say, what is percussive therapy? But when they saw their personal trainer, a chiropractor, or physical therapist using it, they said, that feels really good, I want one too. And so that helped us with making a very efficient marketing program.
Yeah, so the question then for the audience to think about to themselves is, in your industry, whether it's finance, consumer products, food and beverage, sports, entertainment, like what is your deep, narrow niche target? Because I think it's really easy to say, oh, you know, what I've got is broadly appealing. Everyone's going to want this. And you want to go after everyone. And then, of course, you know that when you do that, you reach no one.
That's right. And it's very expensive to do that.
Right. So I guess I'm just sort of reiterating how important I think it is to get niche and narrow. One of my mentors is Seth Godin, and he talks to me about this. Basically, it's the minimum viable audience or minimum viable product. Or the MVA, which is like how many people actually need to know about this or hear about this for it to be worth it, right? And so it is sort of an MVP or MVA thought process. Sometimes it can be difficult when there's two people in charge, big personalities. You're the founder, you're the CEO. I mean, you both have complementary roles. At the same time, I'm sure you both have big personalities, and I say, like, where have you really disagreed? And I ask this with context because another person I can think of, Marcella Sapone, she started this company called Hello Alfred, which is basically like Uber for butler services, and she is a co-founder. And I can think about some of these other companies that have co-founders that really struggle sometimes. Where have you guys disagreed fundamentally, and how have you solved that? To sort of give some advice to other co-founders.
I mean, I would say we actually encourage disagreement, and maybe I would say debate, not disagreement. There's a lot of things that he sees I don't see, or vice versa, and we challenge each other. So we want to do what's best for the company. I think the reason it works is because we both put the company first. It's not about me, it's not about him or anyone else. It's about the company and our customers, and what are we doing that best serves those two groups.
Earlier in the conversation, you said you sort of accredited me to being a visionary, and I think I would call that delusion, not visionary. And I think Ben has the ability to be visionary more than I do in some ways, and that's where we've had some of our struggles, because the solution to the struggle is we stay in our lanes. So if there's something that I feel like is almost impossible for us to accomplish, if I come back and do my part of that, it's accomplishable. But if I'm thinking of the whole picture, Ben will say, calm down, we're going to do it, it'll be okay. Like, we're going to have, you just do this, stay focused on these things, and then we get through it, and it ends up pushing us to a point that we never thought we could before. And then that feeling you get of like, oh God, we just did that.
Yeah.
So we've had those experiences, and it's like you said, he encourages it, I do. Like, we debate, like we have discussions about things, but ultimately, like you said, what's best for the company is ultimately what we end up doing, and it's really, you can see in our past, like what we've done, it has been best for the company.
Yeah, and there's that trust and respect, and I think where I've seen co-founders also evolve, the company grows. And where things go wrong is when people forget what their roles are and what they're good at, and so they lose that mutual respect. And I think in this case, there is that respect where we rely on each other for what we're good at.
So knowing people are either they have their own product or service right now, which they're trying to grow as a brand, or they're dreaming about it. What advice would you give to people who are thinking about inventing something that doesn't exist, and then taking that to market?
Sure. You want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we haven't talked about this yet, but I mean, it was 8 or 9 years of just banging my head against the wall. And so I think when people if you have an idea, you're going to have a challenge.
But what does banging your head mean? Does it mean like
banging my head? That's a really good point. Being told no by Indian Wells. Walking in trying to treat a professional tennis player and asking to leave because your thing's too noisy and no one likes you. That's banging your head against the wall.
Okay.
Being asked to leave a driving range because that thing you're using is pissing everyone off and you need to get out of here. Being asked to leave locker rooms. Like, what are you doing? What is that? Why are you doing? Like, I'm like that all the time. And I don't mean to be dramatic about this, but even my dad for years was like, what are you doing? You're a chiropractor. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So banging my head against the wall was like, there was something inside that this had to keep coming, and I knew it had to come out. I learned, I've said this, people have said this, I mean, I've heard me say this, but it's not about me. I'm a conduit. This is just what's coming through me right now, and I happen to have the experience personally to talk about it, but it's bigger than me. It's not about that. So I think understanding that for us has also made our ability to move through this a bigger purpose.
Were there times that you wanted to give up? Because rejection is a big part of starting anything.
Yep.
I mean, you have the luxury of coming in, a little bit after the fact and sort of maybe steering the ship in the right direction.
Sure.
But like you had to do all the sludging, the rejection.
I swore it off at least 3 times. Like, I put it away. I was never going to touch it again. I mean, I was treating athletes on the UCLA track at 5:30 in the morning, leaving at 2 in the afternoon with $20 in my hands, thinking, this is insanity. Why am I doing this?
I can just imagine you have this sort of MacGyvered Theragun that's like on a jigsaw mount with a long extension cord out to like.
At that time, I'd finally got a battery operated, but I still had, my batteries only lasted about 10 minutes. So I had to have a battery pack half away across the field and running back and forth. It just, all of those things, I would leave and go home and I'm thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah, it's like a Mickey Mouse operation.
This is not, like, really? And then, but every time it got on someone, and I mean every single time, they would tell me, oh my God, this is amazing, keep doing this. And had I not heard that, I would have quit, because I did. But the people would come to my door, literally knocking on my door, hey, I need that thing, can you treat me with that thing again?
Yeah. And I think it's easy to look back now and say, oh yeah, we started in 2016 and it must have been so easy because he developed the product. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have scars on your back. There are challenges, things that go wrong. And I think the secret of success is being persistent like Jason was, but also knowing how to pivot, knowing how to problem solve, and keep at it and figuring out what's the problem, solving that. And it's a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole because when you're a high growth, fast growing startup, there's always a problem and you got to solve it and move on to the next one.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that, tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it. It's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. It's all about the journey, baby. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot that hang from the rear view. Your dreams in the past ain't nowhere near you. Backseat drivers got nothing but 2 cents. Shotgun riders too biased, they all liars. I should get an A for effort, I'm too tired. But I'm never giving up, that's why I'm kinda admired. Role model, like it or not, I gotta play it. Sugarcoat the rhyme sometimes, but still say it. Said I was quitting at 40 is just a fib. I'm still a kid that's wiping the food off of my bib. You ever wanted something so bad?